Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling. Today we're going to be talking about dream matches. Ones that obviously haven't happened and most likely will never happen, only because many of these guys I'm talking about have long since passed. We're going to omit one that I already covered in the first video I did here, which was WrestleMania 8 with Hogan and Flair. So go back and watch that if you want to hear details of that. And this is coming off the heels of the recent passing of Hulk Hogan, and it's a very sad time for a lot of wrestling fans. So, we'll be talking about him quite a bit, and we'll see where this goes. So, the first dream match I want to cover takes us to 1993. I would have loved for the main event, instead of Lex Luger and Yokozuna that night, this is before I started watching, but having gone back and seen it, I have a different perspective now. I'd love to have seen Hulk Hogan defend his WWF title against Bret Hart in a true passing of the torch moment. And there's many reasons why this didn't happen, one of which being that Hogan didn't think too highly of Bret and therefore didn't want to put him over. I think that hurt Bret's feelings a whole lot and really, what's the word I'm looking for? Disenchanted him for quite some time. Disenchanted Bret. So, it started a lifelong, real-life rivalry between the two. Hatred, I guess you could say. Hogan just didn't think a small guy like Bret was strong enough to carry the company because, you know, they were moving in from the golden age of the WWF to the new generation come 1993, and they wanted smaller guys like a Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, people of that caliber to carry on into this new era of wrestling. So Bret Hart's always been bitter about that, and he has every right to be, and Hogan just acted, all smart-alecky as he normally did. And if that match would have happened, it should have happened at SummerSlam 93 in the main event, and Hogan could have been on his merry way to record Mr. Nanny or Thunder in Paradise or whatever. And all he had to do was submit to the sharpshooter. Bret would have complimented Hulk in that match tenfold, because Bret was always good at covering up other people's mistakes. He always protected everyone in the ring, which I always admired Bret for. Hogan was never a great wrestler, as you know. Hell of a performer, very charismatic. Bret needed a little work with his mic skills, but that got so much better over time, and he was very well-rounded by the time Montreal happened. So Bret should have put him in the sharpshooter, and he would have used a lot of technical moves on him, and Hogan would have just been a lot of brute strength. Bret's used to bigger opponents. He already had faced Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9, and that's a whole other thing, too. Bret, if you really wanted to push it here, Bret actually should have gotten the rematch, despite having salt thrown in his eyes, and not Hulk coming out and winning the belt for a fifth time when nobody really cared. Either that, or have Yokozuna walk out as champion. Hulk could have beat him at King of the Ring, and then that could have set up SummerSlam 93, return the favor to Bret. But of course, things didn't work out that way. I'm glad Yokozuna got a longer title reign than just, 126 seconds. So now we'll move on to another one, and this one also includes Hulk Hogan. This takes us to early 2002. The original plan for WrestleMania 18 was supposed to be Hogan versus Austin, Icon versus Icon, not Hogan versus Rock. Now, don't get me wrong, Hogan versus Rock was epic. It's one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, and the energy in the Sky Dome alone, you could just feel it even if you weren't there that night. And Hogan was getting more cheers than Rock, which was surprising because I'm more of a Rock fan. But be that as it may, it's because I grew up watching more of Rock than I did Hogan. WrestleMania 20 would have been a good time to do this. If Austin could have put off that retirement match, he had a great match with The Rock at Mania 19. If he could have waited a whole year and then had a match with Hogan at WrestleMania 20, of all places, that would have been super. But of course, that didn't happen. I think there was a lot of battle of egos going on at that time from both sides. Austin was hard to work with at times, especially in early 99. I heard he was going through a rough patch with this divorce from his wife who lives in England, his ex-wife now, and they were just, his neck was really starting to bother him, so I think physically he wasn't doing too well, and creatively he wasn't happy with the direction, which is why he took his ball and left, and went home in June of 2002. Austin was also, and that leads me to the Mania match we ended up getting with Austin and Scott Hall. Now, Scott Hall was in no condition to be in a WrestleMania match. He was a full-blown alcoholic by that point, and, not to mention some drug use going on. And thank God Scott Hall got better before he passed away just 3 years ago. thanks to Diamond Dallas Page and his DDP yoga. But yeah, Austin was not happy. A year prior, he was main eventing Mania with The Rock in Houston, and now in Toronto, he's in a mid-card match with Scott Hall, which wasn't even all that great a match. And I remember he left the very next night. He, went home. He didn't leave the company, but he left the arena, went home, didn't go to Raw the next night. He wasn't seen on Raw for at least a few weeks after that. So if Austin and Hogan happened, that would have been great, only because I always thought of them as being number ones. Not that The Rock isn't number one, but, with Rock and Austin being popular at the same exact time period, it was a very close race there. Almost very parallel. But WrestleMania 20 would have all come full circle, not just because I was there, but because it was, a milestone event. And, Hogan started the first WrestleMania, and then Austin kind of carried after WrestleMania 14, and everything would have come together nicely, and I think Austin would have benefited from the win here, more so than Hogan. And that could have been Austin's swan song, and that would have been better than him refereeing that abysmal Goldberg-Lesnar match. Austin was the only one that got cheered, I can tell you firsthand. Everyone was giving middle fingers to both Lesnar and Goldberg as they were on their way out. All right, another dream match that should have happened but didn't brings us to the early 90s, and this one I think should have happened if the timing was right and the build-up played out just fine, it should have happened at WrestleMania 11. Macho Man Randy Savage versus the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Savage wanted this feud to happen more than anything else. He left the company in November of 1994. On an episode of Raw, Vince McMahon made an announcement. Conspicuous by his absence, the Macho Man Randy Savage opted not to re-sign a new contract, or him and the World Wrestling Federation couldn't come to terms on a new contract, so he's left the company. Randy, I want to thank you for all your time you've given to the World Wrestling Federation. Thank you for all the memories that we'll always cherish. And good luck and good speed. Godspeed. Little did he know he was going to WCW. He didn't know that then, or Vince wouldn't have been so nice in that farewell promo on Raw. Savage did not want to be a color commentator the rest of his career. He wasn't that old. And the new generation, while they were pushing younger talent, they still had older people. You had Bob Backlund, who was older than Savage. Who else did you have? King Kong Bundy returned, and these were, 80s guys we're talking about. So Savage would have been just fine. And Shawn Michaels was a guy he really liked that he easily could have put over. And Shawn was already over from that ladder match. But I think there would have been a lot of... they both had Sensational Sherry in common, when she was the queen with the Macho King, and then she was Shawn's main squeeze for a while. So that all could have led to, like a comeback match of sorts for Savage, and they needed that star power, especially in early 95, when you had a big star like Savage already gone and in a rival organization. So they could have built it up very nicely, had a lot of promos. Maybe one of the things I like in long build-ups is that they don't touch each other. That sounds wrong. They don't come in contact with each other. So don't have any matches until WrestleMania. Not even tag matches. See, I don't like what they do in this current day and age. They've been doing it since, Ruthless Aggression. Maybe a little bit of Attitude Era, but... Anyways, yeah, Shawn could have taunted him, and he could have made fun of him for, being washed up or whatever, and that would have been a great fuel to the fire. And then it would have been a great technical match all over the Hartford Civic Center, which is where WrestleMania 11 took place that night. It was held. And I think Shawn would have benefited from the win, for sure, because Savage, was there to put him over. And who knows what would have happened after that. Shawn would have definitely gone on to win, another Intercontinental title and then eventually the WWF title. But the match we ended up getting with Shawn at WrestleMania 11 was against Diesel, which was actually the best match that night. Not as great as the match they'd have a year, 13 months later at Good Friends, Better Enemies in Your House, but certainly a terrific match, no doubt about it. And he made Diesel look great. It's probably Diesel's best match as WWF champion. But Diesel could have fought somebody else, or I don't know what would have happened with the world title picture, but kind of not the point right now. But Savage and Michaels, I would have loved to have seen it happen. I think they were in a tag match I remember watching on a Coliseum video, Grudges, Gripes, and Grunts. Savage and Bret Hart against Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. And Michaels and Flair had Sherry and Perfect in their corners, respectively. So that was pretty much the only time I ever saw them, and that was a Coliseum video exclusive. So it was a house show, Wrestling Challenge, Superstars taping, whatever. Now here's a match that obviously never happened because this, this man died before it could ever get going, and he was already out of the company pretty much. I'm talking about a battle of the greatest mythological figures. Well, there's two battles, but we'll start with this one. The Undertaker versus Andre the Giant. Oh my god. Now, it wouldn't have been a great match given Andre's health and how slow he was in the ring because of his, what's that word? Big Show has this thing too. The gargantuanism. I'm just blanking out on the word right now. Acromegaly. Because of Andre's acromegaly, Big Show had the pituitary gland removed from his brain. Andre did not, which is why he kept growing and growing until it caused a lot of pressure on his hips. And he couldn't walk anymore without the aid of crutches. So Undertaker and Andre, and this is like Andre 1987 Andre. And I would say this would be like Undertaker, I don't know when this would take place, but I always like to picture Undertaker in his purple gloves, like mid-90s Taker. Andre would have dominated this match, much like, this would remind me a lot of Giant Gonzalez and Undertaker from either WrestleMania 9 or SummerSlam 93, both crap fests, because Gonzalez was not that great, but he was 8 feet tall, so it made him, a mainstay because of how huge he was. So it would have been like a Taker-Gonzalez match. Andre would have been on the offense. And then eventually Taker would pull a Hulk Hogan-esque moment, like Hogan slamming Andre at Mania 3. He'd eventually get him up for a tombstone. That's going to hurt his back. But I'm sure there would have been a way to make that work, and that would be the only time they'd ever actually do that spot, if at all possible. Otherwise, Taker could have done old school and then maybe a clothesline from the top rope or something. Definitely not a last ride. There was no last ride with that Taker, not till 2000. So, I actually did a dream match when I used to collect the action figures, Undertaker and Andre, and that was the main event of my fictional WrestleMania one year. If you collected figures, you'll appreciate that. Another match that should have happened, this actually could have happened 10 years ago, but didn't. Undertaker versus Sting, and that should have been WrestleMania 31. Sting had a very, very short, very brief WWE career before he got inducted to the Hall of Fame, and he had to lose at WrestleMania 31. Triple H just had to finish off every WCW competitor there was. And Sting always opted never to come to WWE until 2014. He finally decided, okay, I'm going to go to the big leagues. And of course, we all know how that worked out for him. And that was a great match, Sting and Triple H, only I wish Sting had won. That was his only Mania match. Then he got inducted to the Hall of Fame the next year. But it would have been so much better if it was Undertaker and Sting. And the entrances would have been cool as hell. And I remember Sting came out with these people drumming, and they were wearing the face paint, the crow face paint that Sting was famous for. And Taker could have had his own kick-ass entrance, and then the action in the ring would have been fine for two 50-year-old men or whatever. And they're both in their 60s now, so I'm glad they finally made it to retirement for their health's sake. But hell yeah, that would have been so cool. And it would have only drawback is that pay-per-view would have taken place in daylight because they were in San Francisco. They were in San Francisco, but what was that part of California? Shit, I'm forgetting the name of the city. Let me look it up real quick. Give me a second. We got time. So, 31. The hell city was that? It was Levi's Stadium. Oh, in Santa Clara. Santa Clara. There's so many cities in California, it's hard to keep up. Inglewood was WrestleMania 39 2 years ago, but going back 10 years ago, it was Santa Clara, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So it was daylight, while on the East Coast here, it was already night. And it didn't get dark till the main event, until Seth Rollins cashed in on Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. So anyways, yeah, that takes care of that dream match. Another one would have been a battle of wits. I'm talking about Chris Jericho versus Roddy Piper. Best talkers. Some of the best of all time. Oh my god, can you imagine how much shit they'd have talked to each other and how loud and obnoxious it would have gotten? They should have pulled the trigger at SummerSlam 03. Piper was definitely not in his prime, but he was still wrestling on occasion. He had that abysmal match at Judgment Day of 03 against Mr. America and that whole craptastic storyline, which we're not going to get into. And Jericho was still in the prime of his career, though not in the world title picture. I think he was feuding with Kevin Nash in a hair versus hair match, which led to Kevin Nash cutting his hair short, like we see today. He grew it out since then, but then cut it again. Jericho and Piper. Jericho would have had to be on offense a lot. And I think one of them would have had to be face in this one. I think the best person to turn face would have been Piper. Piper was a heel, feuding with Mr. America and Zach Gowen. He had Sean O'Haire at his corner. Jericho was still a heel then. And then I definitely get the younger guy to win. I'm big on putting talent over, so I think Jericho would have benefited from the win here to shut up Piper once and for all. And that would have been perfect. Who's going to shut up who once and for all? That would have been a perfect tagline or a perfect resounding theme for this feud. And I feel I obviously miss Roddy Piper. He died 10 years ago, and that's one wrestler I wish I would have met. I always loved Piper, especially in the mid-'80s. And I wasn't even born yet, but 1985, going to WrestleMania 1, he was one of the best heels. Oh my God, he was so obnoxious. He was so brash. He was so demeaning. Anything you could have imagined from a heel. This is the 80s we're talking about. And he was wearing that shirt with the tiger on it, or the puma, and the kilt. And, man, when he had that match with Hogan at the War to Settle the Score, February 85, right before WrestleMania 1, that was on MTV. MTV was big into wrestling at the time. Cyndi Lauper and Dave Wolf, her producer. Cyndi Lauper accompanied Wendy Richter. Oh, this is the rock and wrestling era we're talking about now. So Piper, yeah, that was his peak, I think, 1985. Nat Piper, if you ever go back and watch it, he's so great. And Jericho at his peak, I'd say, was probably the early 2000s, and both as a babyface and then as a heel. But I liked him best from 2008 to 2010. He was that slow-talking, condescending heel wearing those nice suits. You'll never amount to anything, you gelatinous tapeworms and parasitic hypocrites. Oh, man. Great stuff, Jericho, Piper. Alright, what else have I not covered yet as I look at this long list? Alright, let's deviate a little bit. Let's go to the ladies here. This one should have also taken place at WrestleMania 31, but didn't, as this was AJ Lee's swan song for WWE. She was in a tag match with Paige to take on the Bella Twins. I think Paige and AJ won. I haven't watched that match since then. And I had no idea AJ was going to be out of the company, but she left that following the end of that week, actually, after WrestleMania 31, and hasn't returned to wrestling since. Went on to, and she married CM Punk, and of course her husband is there now, CM Punk in WWE, so we'll see. She could always come back. But I'm talking about Lita versus AJ Lee, and this goes back to, I want to say 2001. AJ Lee would have only been, she was born 87. AJ Lee was only 14 years old when she met Lita, and there's this great clip of AJ Lee going to WWF New York, getting the Lita's VHS or DVD, It Just Feels Right, signed by Lita, and AJ just breaks down in tears because Lita was her idol. And they're hugging each other, and it would have been a nice full circle moment. Lita was already in post-retirement, but she was still coming back for matches from time to time. So that actually would have been a great match just because, they're the cool chicks of the bunch and, not into doing their hair and nails and all that. And Lita was kind of edgy, as was AJ in a way. And AJ Lee, I always liked her character of the chick that's into comic books, video games, nerdy stuff like I like, I guess. So she's a woman after my own heart. They are both women after my own heart, I have to say. And yeah, AJ could have done some great offense with agility. Lita, maybe not so much because of the neck injury. And so she wasn't doing a whole lot of that, but she definitely could have done some technical stuff. Could have done some DDTs, twist of fate, and then end with a moonsault. But as to who it would have benefited, well, AJ was going to be out of the company, but she should have gotten the win as it was her swan song, and AJ definitely gets the Duke on this one, if you ask me. And that's a dream match that should have happened for the ladies, but didn't. You could have easily put Paige in there, too, and that would have been just fine. Paige kind of reminded me of both ladies, kind of a hybrid. What else? Last one I'll talk about here is a fatal four-way, and I don't know where the hell we would have done this because I don't think any of these four men I'm about to mention were ever in the WWE at the same time. But these are the best high flyers, and three of them being cruiserweights, one of them not so much because he's bigger. I'm talking about Sabu versus Juventud Guerrera versus Ultimo Dragon versus Papi Chulo, who I prefer to call over Essa Rios. You know him better as Essa Rios. I liked him better as Papi Chulo, so we're going to call him that. Oh my God, if they were given at least 20 minutes to do this match, and they wouldn't need props or weapons. Sabu was always notorious for that, but God, can you imagine all the whisper in the winds and the, all the other high-flying spots that could have taken place? I was just thinking of Whisper in the Wind. Could have double-teamed on that. There could have been like a Sky Twister press. All sorts of moves like that. Moonsaults, needless to say. Planchas. Ultimo Dragon and Juventud complemented each other in WCW in the Cruiserweight division. They didn't cross paths in WWE in the mid-2000s. Papi Chulo was rocking it on Los Superastros on Univision on Sunday mornings between 98 and 99. Sabu, the best I got to watch from him, and he's not too proud of this. ECW on Sci-Fi. Though, of course, I went back and watched other original ECW footage of him. Now, the best person to come out the winner of this one, probably Sabu. I mean, he's probably the most well-known out of the four here, but for diehard fans, I hope there's a diehard fan out there that would agree with me on putting these four together in a nice Fatal 4-Way match. It's not elimination, it's just one fall to a finish, so it's sudden death. And Sabu, I think, would have been the best victor of this one. He could have come in with a chair at the end or something, and it would have been sick. So yeah, think of other dream matches you want to talk about, or maybe there's some key points I may have missed, and there's probably this. We might revisit this topic another time because there's other stuff out there too. So anyways, that's about all I've got for you today. This has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.